there. Let's open up this stack of sources we have today, all pointing towards a spot in Wisconsin called Castle Rock Wayside.
Right. It's interesting because the name Castle Rock, well, it pops up in a few places in that area.
Exactly.
And these sources give us different angles on it. We've got travel notes, climbing discussions, park guides, even tags on, photographs.
So our goal here is really to piece together what Castle Rock Wayside is specifically, pulling the useful bits from all these varied perspectives.
Yeah, cut through any confusion.
Right. We want to get a clear picture of this one particular location.
Okay, so let's zoom in first to sort of anchor this. One source pinpoints Castle Rock Wayside directly with the town of Camp Douglas, Wisconsin.
Camp Douglas?
Yeah, it's specifically listed as an attraction that's part of something called the Camp Douglas route. We can circle back to that route later, maybe.
Good idea. And helpfully, one source gives a specific address for it.
It does. County RDC, Camp Douglas, WI 54618. So that certainly locks down its physical spot, at least according to that source.
County Road C.
Got it.
And what's particularly vivid are the keywords attached to stock photos of the site, found in one of the sources.
Ah, the photo tags. What do they say?
Well, they use terms like rock, tower, geological formation, and intriguingly, inselberg and monadnock.
Inselberg, monadnock. Okay, those sound significant.
They are. In geology, basically, an inselberg or monadnock is like an isolated hill or rock formation. It rises pretty abruptly from a flatter plain around it.
Why does that happen?
Often because the rock it's made of is tougher, more resistant to erosion than the land surrounding it. So these tags paint a picture of Castle Rock Wayside as this distinct, prominent rock feature.
Just stands out.
Exactly. Stands out in the landscape, visible right from the road. It suggests, a pretty unique bit of geology there. A roadside attraction, scenic stone columns were other tags used.
A striking rock feature just sitting there by the road. That gives us a great visual. So with that in mind, what do the sources tell us about what people actually do there? Or maybe can't do. Right. This is where a climbing forum discussion gives some very specific details about activities, or perhaps more importantly, what's not allowed.
Okay.
According to the source, roped climbing is explicitly prohibited at Castle Rock Wayside.
Ah, okay. So organized roped climbing is definitely out, but is there any way to get onto or the rock?
Yes, the source does indicate that solo climbing without ropes, to the highest point, is mentioned as being possible.
Oh.
Yeah. The user who wrote about it described it as kind of neat and easy for the most part.
Kind of neat and easy. Interesting.
And here's a surprising detail from that source. They mentioned there are carved holes in places, made for hands and feet.
Carved? You mean like man-made footholds?
Barely. That's what the source says. Carved holes for hands and feet.
Wow. That's fascinating. It suggests people have been, climbing it this way for a while, maybe? Shaping it slightly?
Could be. It certainly implies a history of interaction beyond just looking at it. But the source also offered an assessment of the rock quality itself.
What did they say?
Generally poor. That was the assessment.
Poor quality. Even with carved holes, that sounds a bit risky, maybe.
Well, it certainly raises a practical point about the rock's composition, potential stability. Though they did also suggest that some open faces on the formation might offer other, maybe different climbing possibilities.
Okay. And that same climbing source also helped clarify some potential confusion about other rocks nearby, right?
Yeah.
Something about Mill Bluff State Park.
Absolutely, yes. The source makes a key distinction there. Mill Bluff State Park, which is nearby, also has impressive rock towers.
Right.
But those towers are strictly off-limits to climbing, completely forbidden.
Why is that?
Mill Bluff is designated as a state natural wildlife preserve. Different rules apply.
Got it. Preserve rules.
And the source even includes a practical warning for anyone thinking of visiting that area, Mill Bluff, that it's absolutely thick with wood and deer ticks.
Oof, good to know.
Yeah, definitely. So this is really helpful because it confirms Castle Rock Wayside in Camp Douglas is separate, distinct from Mill Bluff State Park. Different place, different rules, especially about climbing.
That distinction feels really important because looking across all these sources, that name, Castle Rock, definitely comes up in relation to other significant locations nearby. Could be easy to mix them up.
Very easily. The sources clearly describe not one, but two quite substantial Castle Rock County parks.
2 county parks. Okay.
One is in Adams County, the other is in Juneau County. And importantly, both of these large county parks are situated right on Castle Rock Lake.
And Castle Rock Lake itself is pretty big, right?
It is. The sources note it's the 4th largest body of water in Wisconsin, so a major feature.
Definitely.
And the descriptions of these county parks, well, they highlight their scale and amenities are just vastly different from a single roadside rock feature.
So what kind of things do they have?
We're talking major recreational facilities. Significant camping, one source mentions over 300 sites at the Juneau County Park.
300 sites. Wow.
Yeah, and the Adams County Park is described as the second busiest county park in the area. So these are popular developed places.
So much bigger scope than the Wayside. What else besides camping?
They offer designated swimming areas, improved boat launches for lake access, playgrounds, developed hiking trails. Standard big park stuff. Pretty much. The Adams County Park even has a significant visitor office center. It's got things like a game room, concession stand, heated 24-hour showers and restrooms.
Heated showers. Nice.
Yeah, and it's also noted as a designated area for snowmobile unloading and loading in winter.
Okay, so these county parks on the lake, which you mentioned the Castle Rock Hydro Dam influences the lake.
Right. The sources mention the dam in relation to the lake's formation or management.
So these parks are clearly large, multi-activity recreational destinations. They stand in really sharp contrast to the specific Castle Rock Wayside rock formation back in Camp Douglas.
Precisely. The name Castle Rock is just really common around there, which is why digging into these different sources is so key.
Makes sense.
I mean, the sources also reference other recreational sites around the lake area using the name, like Castle Rock Landing. There's a Castle Rock horse ski trailhead, even a Wayside Parkway 21 boat launch.
Just Castle Rock everywhere.
Pretty much. But the Wayside in Camp Douglas, the one we started with, the subject here, that's its own distinct geological feature, its own implied activities, its own rules about climbing. It's specific.
Let's connect this back to something you mentioned right at the start, the Camp Douglas route. You said the sources tell us Castle Rock Wayside is an attraction on this route. Can you describe the route itself a bit more?
Certainly. The Camp Douglas route is approximately 240 miles long. The estimated time is about 6.75 hours, riding or driving.
Okay. And the road surface?
Described as entirely paved, so suitable for regular vehicles, motorcycles.
And where does this route run, geographically speaking? What's the landscape like?
It's situated right on the edge of the geological area known as the driftless area.
Ah, the driftless area.
Exactly. Yeah. And while the sources note the hills along this particular route aren't maybe quite as dramatic as those found deeper further west into the driftless area proper,
Right.
they still describe plentiful hills, so it offers interesting terrain for travelers, not just flat landscape.
For listeners who might not know, what's the key thing about the driftless area? Why is it called that?
Well, the driftless area is pretty unique because it was largely untouched by the last big glaciers, the last continental glaciation.
So the ice sheets missed it.
Basically, yeah. While the ice covered much of the surrounding Midwest, smoothing out hills and leaving behind drift, that's glacial sediment, this area was bypassed.
And the result?
The result is this really rugged landscape. You get steep hills, deep river valleys, lots of exposed rock formations like these inselbergs, these monadnocks we talked about, Castle Rock Wayside being an example. It contrasts really sharply with the flatter glaciated land nearby.
So being on the edge of it, like this Camp Douglas route is?
Means you start to see these distinct geological features emerging from the landscape. It's a transition zone.
That context really helps picture it. So this route travels through that kind of terrain. What other attractions are specifically listed on this route alongside Castle Rock Wayside?
The sources list the Wisconsin National Guard Museum, which is right there in Camp Douglas too, I believe,
Okay.
and Mill Bluff State Park again, that reminder, but the different climbing rules there.
Right. No climbing at Mill Bluff.
Correct. And it also incorporates Wisconsin Rustic Road #112, which is located north of Elroy. So a mix of natural and historical points of interest.
And the sources even get quite specific about navigating this route, if you actually wanted to follow it.
They do. Very practical stuff here. A paper map is available for purchase.
Old school.
Yep. But for digital navigation, the sources provide a useful note. The digital map files they offer are designed to work with most GPS devices. However,
So there's a catch.
a bit of one for certain apps. They specifically mention that smartphone apps like Revi, Arrow-E, Scenic, and Curviger will work for their follow-the-line navigation feature.
Okay.
But popular apps like Google Maps and Apple Maps are not compatible with their specific route files.
Huh. That's really specific, but definitely good to know if you were planning a trip and relying on, say, Google Maps.
Exactly. It's the kind of practical, granular detail you only really get by pulling together these different kinds of sources, the route guide, the climbing forum, the park info.
So bringing it all together then,
Mhm.
based on everything we've sifted through, Castle Rock Wayside in Camp Douglas is, well, it's quite distinct.
Definitely.
It's not one of the big county parks down on Castle Rock Lake, and it has very different rules than nearby Mill Bluff State Park.
Right.
It seems primarily defined by this unique geological feature, that striking rock formation, the inselberg or monadnock just sitting there, roadside attraction style,
Yeah, that seems to be the core of it.
with its own specific, if maybe somewhat informal, ways people interact with it, like those carved handholds we talked about.
That's right. By pulling together these pieces, the location, the visual descriptions from photo tags, the climbing notes, the crucial comparisons to other local sites, and placing it within the context of a Camp Douglas route, we've managed to get well, a pretty precise understanding.
Yeah, a clear picture of one specific place within a region where that name, Castle Rock, is used for several different kinds of recreational spots.
Exactly. It avoids the confusion.
It really highlights how a single geological feature can become a focal point, can it? Gaining different meanings, just a cool thing to see on a drive, maybe a minor challenge for a specific type of climber, or just a known landmark in the local landscape.
Hmm.
Thinking about that unique geology, that really resistant rock standing alone while the softer stuff eroded away around it, it makes you wonder what kind of, deep time forces shaped that particular spot to leave that solitary rock sentinel standing there today.
That's the enduring question, isn't it? What specific sequence of geological events, erosion patterns, left that piece of the ancient landscape exposed just like that, right by the road in Camp Douglas? Fascinating stuff.